Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis.
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Good day and welcome to our podcast. This is CampHacker, episode 85, recorded on the 1st of November, 2015. On today's show is Camp Right for You, Part 2, Preparing Yourself for a Sustainable Camp Career. If you would like easy, automatic free updates of our podcast, you can subscribe in iTunes or use the free Stitcher app. This week's CampHacker podcast is sponsored by Go Camp Pro. In a lot of ways, Go Camp Pro was built for directors just like you, people doing it all themselves. We designed this by asking ourselves, what resources do we wish that we had during our time as directors? The material will be helpful to those in their first 5 to 7 years of directing, but so much of it fits for camp directors who are looking for ways to make their camp life easier. To join, simply go to gocamp.pro. The podcast is also sponsored by camp pros like you who support the show on Patreon. If you've got even one good idea from the CampHacker podcast, you could show your support for the show for as little as $1 per episode. We've got some great rewards too, just like a Kickstarter campaign. Please go to patreon.com/CampHacker. We hope you enjoy the CampHacker show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast. My name is Travis Allison. I run a blog about running a great summer camp at CampHacker TV, and I'm one of the founders of GoCamp.pro.
Hi, my name is Topher. I am the assistant director at Camp Gray down in Wisconsin.
And I'm Mark Cooper. I'm a full-time camp director at Camp Tamarack in about 2 hours outside of Toronto in Muskoka, Ontario.
Mark, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Travis. Always good to be here, too.
Yes, and Mark, actually both of these guys should be a lesson to other listeners, too. Both have reached out at different times and said they'd love to be back on. So we do try to bring in a different voice every time. So consider that an open invitation to email me at travis@camphacker.tv and say, hey, I'd like to talk about camp sometime. Mark, tell us a bit about Tamarack.
Tamarack, so we're a co-ed residential camp up in Muskoka. Right now, I'm in Toronto. We have our Toronto office at 1 hour and 45 minutes. So the traditional during the summer, and we get tons of, over the past couple of years, really attracting a big international community. Last year we had 60 kids from Mexico, kids from Spain, France. We actually had our first about a dozen kids from China. We have about 120 staff, about 330 kids on a private lake. It's a beautiful place, and and then that's during the summer. And then big push now is the shoulder season, also that May and June and September with the running the outdoor ed program, the school groups, and the corporate staff too, which is kind of a whole other. I think we're finding out it's a whole other venture.
Yeah.
So. It definitely keeps us busy.
Right on. Well, it's great to have you back, Mark, and I can also attest that Tamarack is a beautiful site. Now, I haven't been to Camp Gray, but I've seen lots of great stuff about Camp Gray. If you have been to my presentations, you will have seen one or two of the videos that Topher has produced for Camp Gray, because I love them so much and use them as great examples often. So, Topher, it's a pleasure to have you back.
Hey, thanks. It's my pleasure.
So you actually have a great year-round program and a lot of year-round stuff going on at Camp Gray.
Yeah, and that's something that really it surprises us that there's even folks that come during the summer that don't realize that we're open year-round. But we get almost 3 times as many kids, more than 3,000 kids between September and May that come out here. Just about every day there's something going on. I would say summer camp is still our bread and butter, though. We get about 1,300 kids out to our traditional summer camp. We're a Catholic camp, so we tie that in. But just a lot of fun going on out here year-round.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's great to have you back too, Topher.
Thank you.
There are some of the other regulars send their apologies that they're not able to be here. It's just the three of us this time. For those of you not watching us on YouTube, there's just three faces instead of the others. Today we're going to actually, before we do that, let me say this that we hope that what we offer here at CampHacker with this show and with Camp Code provides some great value to you as a camp director. Certainly our goal is to always be answering questions that you're asking yourself and looking for routes to that. So the way that we can best get this free service of CampHacker out to others is if you help us spread the word. So if you go to camphacker.tv/iTunes, there's a space there that you can leave a review. We're not begging for 5 stars. We're looking for an honest review from other people. That helps us decide what to focus on more, what the next directions are for the show. But it's also really helpful for helping people find a podcast about directing summer camp. So again, that's at camphacker.tv/iTunes. And today for our topic is one we're excited about. It's the second in our 3-part series called Is Camp Right for Me? And it is really focused on people who are considering summer camp or in their first 3-4 years of being a year-round camp person. And our last show focused on helping you make that decision, whether just because you loved summer camp as a child or as a college-aged camp staff person, if it's still appropriate for you to be in the business as an adult. And I think there's some awesome discussion. We've had some really great feedback about that. Hat tip to Ruby, who was listening to it and tweeting it yesterday. I could see there's like 6 tweets from Ruby as she was listening to the show yesterday from parts of the conversation. And oh shoot, I wanted to call it somebody else who said that they have a Joe Richards quote board in their office that they just write down funny things that Joe says on the podcast. Crap. Anyway, I'll maybe get a chance to look that up and thank that person in person for making me laugh out loud at the idea of a Joe Richards board in your office.
We need like a T-shirt. Right?
It would be hilarious. It would be hilarious. So today we're going to continue on the theme, but we're going to talk about how, as a new professional, it doesn't have to be young professional, but someone who's new into doing this year-round, how you can prepare yourself for the long slog of this. We talked a lot in the last show about how hard this job really is, that the benefits are obvious. You get to be outside, you get to be with people who have similar interests and people that inspire you, but there are hard parts to this. And so preparing yourself for that is really important. I'm becoming more and more a fan of the Stoic philosophers and their idea that the best way to be happy is to prepare yourself for the worst and just imagine negative situations and then how you'd overcome them. And then once you've figured out how to work through that mentally, then you're much more prepared if bad things ever happen. But usually things surprise you with how good they happen. So hopefully this is the Stoic philosophy version of the CampHacker podcast. And Topher, I'd like to throw to you first. What are some of the things you think that people don't think of? What are some of the hard things that people don't think of when they accept a job full-time at a summer camp?
I think, well, for me specifically, and I've heard this from others as well, is the variety of tasks that are thrown your way.
Yep.
And I think the need to be malleable. When I first took the job 8 years ago, I had a set list of tasks that I do very few of those anymore. A lot of that is because I do the marketing, and it's amazing how much marketing has changed in the last 8 years with social media and podcasts and all these things that weren't here 8 years ago. So I think that's maybe a big thing that I struggled with, and I've heard from others that yes, you've got to be on your toes because there's a lot of variety, but then also be prepared to say goodbye to certain things if it's not working and go other directions.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really great. How about for you, Mark? What are some of the things you think people don't think of when they sign up for this?
I think a big thing is finding the balance between family life and family life and camp life. I think we all have this little utopic world of of summer camp. But then when it's not at summer camp, really in the off season, where it's finding that balance, and or if you're in some type of relationship, then you have to kind of pick up and leave. And when you're at camp and those, your significant others, or even keeping in contact and connection with the outside world during the summertime, is almost non-existent. And when you're in a full-time role, also, you're not always surrounded by all the support network. I think becomes somewhat smaller. They're not all your friends now. They become sometimes employees and still friends, but you see it from a very different angle. So I think that it's a big learning curve. I remember when I got into it, and even I see now as we've brought up some other people, that's it gets a little sometimes lonelier at the top, and then trying to manage setting out that time for your other life, not just camp, because camp is specifically during that summertime, it's very intense, right?
Yeah,
that's the big thing.
Yeah, I think that's certainly one thing that that a lot of people don't think about, is that intensity. I mean, most people who would be going into this full time will have likely had 4-month summers where it's go for 4 months, and then at the end of it, you just sort of collapse and sleep. Mm-hmm. And people famously, unknowing relatives and weird friends will say to you, "What do you do the rest of the year?" And as a camp director, that stretch period where you're pushing so hard has gotten so much longer. Man, it's gotten really long. And for most camp directors would find those 18-hour days, 6 days a week, would last 6 months of the year. It would last till the end of September. If you have fall programming, it might last you till November, and that you have to be able to be better at pacing yourself for that. And there's no doubt that means that sometimes you have to miss out on the fun stuff that happens late at night and get sleep. But it is that exhausting 4 months lasts 6 to 7 months now that you're in it full time, and you really have to get better at looking after yourself, going to bed, and as Mark says, finding time for friends, finding time for the things that rejuvenate you. I am not a morning person, but I have had to learn as camp director to be a morning person, because it was the only time that I could be alone. And I'd have an hour and a half before 7:30 in the morning, usually an hour, that I could go walk the dogs in the trails in the bush. Or, if I was in the city, then I would be, just walking here, quiet, listening to stuff, whatever it takes to rejuvenate, to have some time on my own. And, then add into that, having a partner, being married, then I had to learn how to incorporate that. And we worked hard to incorporate that into our own lives too. Any other things that come up for you guys about surprises for people in the job?
For me, I think it's also it's the I've been doing this 15 years full time, and I think it's every year I catch myself saying, "Wow!" Just when I thought I've seen it all, I never thought that would happen, or a staff would do that, or a situation, or we had a gastro outbreak, and well, that happened and that happened. So it's always evolving, and like Topher said, like even like the advertising over the past couple of years, even like it's always, it's very organic, camp, and I think that's what happens. Is I think in order to get into the camping game now, you have to be fluid. You can't. There's camp guys who are just set in their ways, and that's it. And you can't play that game anymore. I think like it's every year, just these things. It is, like you said, is I guess plan for the worst and expect the best, and and you can do as much planning, but nothing can prepare you for some of the stuff that you're going to see. Like be as proactive as you can, but like it throws you for a loop. So whether it's a staff situation or a camper situation, or whatever it is, it's unbelievable just when I think of the things that you see as a camp director, or full time. And I think a big thing is also like it's it becomes a job. So, you still love camp, but that feeling of camp of, oh, let's all take a day off with four of our university and college buddies and stuff. Like you kind of become sometimes a little nostalgic for that time. Where like, oh, wow, I wish I could be that, but I got 15 parent phone calls, three kids who, busting their kid, two international kids who are arriving. The kitchen, the fridge broke down. 4 in the morning. Now you're out there with whatever it is. There's so many pieces to the puzzle of summer camp. Right?
Yeah. Topher, you're going to say something too?
Yeah, I would just say that, because you're exactly right, Mark. There's so many things that can and do go wrong. And I remember it could be daunting. I remember thinking about these things in the past and worrying about, well, if this happens. And but I find that some of the best stories that we have amongst the full-time staff that have been here for a lot of years are reminiscing about, oh, do you remember week one back in 2000 when the freezer broke and, this happened? And so is to try to, I guess approach systems where stuff's going to happen. And so to not let that affect the product that you have and to really just kind of laugh at, well, golly, like this broke too. Okay, well, it's camp. Like this happens. So that's something that we try to roll with.
Yeah. I'd say one of my biggest pieces of advice for people who are interested in this, and this is whether or not you are a program person and you're used to being with kids all the time, and that's your introduction to year-round camp work, or if you're more on the management admin side where you're doing planning and thinking big picture. Either way, you have to be comfortable being a problem solver. You have to realize that that life is different in the other months of the year, but it's still up to you to solve the problems. So in the summer, you might have a team of people who can solve problems together, but sometimes you're stuck at camp, you've got a group coming in 2 hours and you're there by yourself and you're going to have to solve some plumbing. Like it's just, there's ways you got to figure out how to do it. And going into, and I don't know how to prepare yourself for that other than psychologically. I'm going to have to, look at problems, break them down into their small pieces and figure out how to solve that. Because there are some people in the world who don't consider themselves problem solvers and, just see things and say, well, I don't know how to do that. And there are lots of times in this job, you just can't be the person who says that. You have to be the person who says, we have to figure out how to do this. And, facing those kind of things with some positivity is the difference between, it's one of the things that makes it sustainable. You're going to laugh about it later. It's going to be the story that you tell, but you have to commit to it with some grace and some positivity, and just like take a deep breath and say, okay, let's start solving. And I think that all that has big implications.
We had something, Travis, called like solution-based thinking.
Yeah.
So whenever there was an issue, and we were discussing, you could only talk if you had a solution, because what happens often at camp is people just feed into it and just infect it. Oh yeah, that's wrong. And all of a sudden it's like, we haven't done anything. And if you're not here to help out, then we just got to say that just step aside and we'll get to you. But solution-based thinking, what's our problem? Who's got an idea to fix it? And camp people are like that, right? Camp people are amazing in that. Like, okay, all right, what's the problem? All right, everyone grab a shovel, let's go. And you just, they're kind of like, I often say, like, and you often say on the podcast, the GTD, they just get things done. Like, just, that's what camp people, and like, all right, there's 150 chairs. You can always tell when you're at a function or something who are camp people. Like, all of a sudden, like, the chairs are gone and everyone just grabs a chair, everyone grabs a table. Like, you love going to a conference and you see, all right, just stuff gets done because everyone pitches in, and when you just know the value of that, right? But coming up with a solution, or you're not welcome to be part of the conversation, because it's so, it becomes just the problem just grows and grows and grows, right?
Yeah. I always have a lot of respect for people who develop what we call director's eyes, and we try to talk to senior staff who we would consider grooming for a year-round position in camps, and say you have to develop the skill of director's eyes, and that's exactly what you described, Mark. You have 200 200 people coming into a room with 150 chairs out, the people who have director's eyes go, boom, 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 we don't have enough chairs. Let's start to work to solve that. Right. And you don't have to say it. There's just people just jump up and start solving. And that ability is something you can learn. Certainly look around the room and see where the problems are in all situations. But then you have to be comfortable being the one who leads that and starts those things instead of waiting for somebody to do it. That's all of that means. How that relates, that makes you a good camp director. That makes you a good year-round camp person, is a person who sees problems and starts to solve them. But how that makes this job sustainable, and how I think it relates to this conversation in particular, is that one of the greatest keys to happiness in the world is serving others. And so you are going to get some great endorphin value, psychological value, out of being the person who can solve things for others. And that makes this job so much easier to do, because there are a lot of days that it's overwhelming. There are a lot of days where you just think, all I need to do is get one foot in front of the other to make it through this day. And the rewards are obviously there. It's totally worth working through those days. But you have to be the person who's willing. I think what makes it sustainable is that moment of thinking for others and doing things for them, and solving their problems that make it, make it easier for you to do this job long term.
Yeah, when I first started here at Camp Gray, I was a counselor. I was in college, counselor for a couple years, and then I got hired into this full-time position. And that first summer, I really missed being a counselor, really missed being around the kids. It wasn't until, Travis, I had that mindset of, well, wait a minute, I'm serving our counselors now to ensure that their experience is great, and that then by extension, their campers' experience is great. It wasn't until I had that mind switch. So well, no, I'm not with the kids as much, but I'm able to impact more kids because I'm impacting the staff and serving them and helping them to create great programming. So there is a definite, yes, it helped my mindset a lot once I made that switch.
What sort of things for you, Mark, made you mentally say, okay, I'm a camp director?
Wow. Wow, that's a good question. Besides, obviously, obviously you signed a contract and said, okay, I'm a camp director. But I think it took I've grown over the past few years. It's been a long time. It's 15 years. But I think what happened is you develop a style. I think a big thing for me, huge turning point, and I think you're a great camp director whether you have kids or not. But when I had a kid, and for me that was such a turning point where I was I saw wow, the trust that parents put in us, because here I was sending my kid away to a day camp too. I kind of got that. I kind of had that same feeling. Wow, that's a massive amount of trust that, here you are, and you're hiring these staff, and these people never meet these staff. These people are trusting you. It's not like I'm lending you my car and stuff, but here's my kid, right? And so I think that was a huge part of kind of when I knew it became or when camp director became real. And also there's a turning point where it's I think at camp when over the past couple of years we've hired a lot of new staff, and I think it's interesting. I also grew up at Tamarack, and then I left for a bunch of years, but when I came back, still people thought of me as Mark Cooper's unit head, and he's so much fun. And all of a sudden I was in a different role. I was no, I'm still really fun, but they were all thinking, oh, let's do something. And I was no, I'm on this side of the fence. And they actually came up with this really terrible nickname. They called me the Nixor, because I would nix everything. And I was it's not nixing stuff. I'm just trying to make it a better place. So it took a couple of years. I think over the past few years, when I have new staff and they're here for the right reasons, and you can see it in their eyes that they're looking to you for direction, and they're saying, hey, can we go for a walk, and can you teach me? And you're wow, like they're kind of taking me not that serious. Like, all of a sudden I was like, wow, they're listening to what I'm saying more than like the kids who have grown up at the camp, these staff who kind of are parachuting in a little bit, and also the campers, and also the parent community now too. Whereas in the off season, our phone will ring, weekly of parents saying, hey, can you give me some advice? You're so good with the 12, 13-year-old girls at camp. My daughter's this is happening at camp. Can you speak to her? I'm like, yeah, of course. And the extension of a camp director, I've realized now, isn't just during the summer. It's like parents, you're the kid expert. You're the, on so many levels. And even whether it's someone's planning a party, can you help me plan? You plan great parties and stuff at camp? Sure. Or, my daughter's going through a really tough time. Do you have anyone to speak to? Can she come in? She feels so comfortable talking to you. And I'm going, I'm the camp director. Like, I'm the guy who wears the funny hats and is on the mic calling you up. But sure, like, so that's when I've kind of realized, and it's taken a while. Those first few years were really tough, but then you become almost that. I think it takes 10 years to become an expert, right? That's what they say, that to really, really get your knowledge. And over the past couple of years, I really felt like, okay, I actually do have, because I've constantly learned, I have this pretty big wealth of knowledge, and it's kind of clicked a little bit, like, and again, going back, I think it's constant. All it is serving others, helping. Call me 24/7. I'm here for you, right? And all of those kind of things, and you get a good feeling when you help others. It's good to help, right? It's good to be there without looking for something in to reciprocate. I'm not going, hey, I'll help you
Right.
because your husband owns a car dealership. Can you get me a that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Like, and I think parents are always taken back. We're like, wow, thanks. It's nice to have you in our corner, right?
Yep.
That's when it's kind of realized, like, when people are reaching out in other areas, sometimes not even just during the summer.
Yeah. Thanks for that. That's
Yeah.
great. For you, Topher, was there a moment where you sort of, switched your head from summer staff to full-time staff mode?
I think, like I was saying earlier, that was a big part of it, was just finally kind of wrapping my mind around that. Yeah, my job now is to serve our staff, and also I'd say a big thing for me was when I took over my position. The guy that had the position previously, he left this binder, that 45-page binder of everything that he did in this position and day-by-day task. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And I kind of, though, it was kind of a double-edged sword, I guess. It was great, and I was so grateful. But at the same time, I think for a couple of years, I just kind of stayed attached to that. Like, well, this is what Joe did. I guess I'll just keep doing that. It wasn't until a couple of years into having this job that I finally said, you know what? It's time to branch away from that, start doing things that I would do. And so then I think when I took ownership of it, those two things, ownership of it, and then also kind of accepting and really appreciating the fact that I was getting to serve our staff. Once I did those two things, I think it was finally like, yes, I am a professional now, and really have never looked back. It's been a great journey ever since then.
Yeah, right on. Right on. Well, I have a couple notes that I just wanted to talk about, but I would ask the two of you just think if there's any final thoughts that you would have while I am talking through some of these things. Of course, welcome to chime in at any time, but I'm going to start to wrap us up in the topic and head into the tool of the week soon. So two things that came up from the stuff that you both said. One is that I know when I first started this job, and I was hired to fix a camp, and I was 23 years old, and I was the sole year-round staff person. And the board clearly said, you've been brought in to fix this camp. And so I had a ton of challenges, not the least of which was my damn board. And so I remember my first summer, getting partway through the summer and having someone leave a note on my my desk, or just in a little message place for me. Most of you know that my camp name was Zoic, so the note said, "Hey Zoic, don't be so stoic." And I realized that I really hadn't smiled, like I hadn't enjoyed things, and And I would say in terms of sustainability and getting yourself ready to do this for long term, 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, that you have to find the fun in it. Like you've got to, whatever your fun is, like it's fun for me. I love that moment when I'm in the woods walking the trails by myself. It's great to have dogs with you. And I love that feeling of knowing the property better than anyone else. And so that's fun for me. But I can't give up on the fact that my other side is that I love singing, leading songs at campfire. And, I love teaching people to play guitar. And I've always said that my favorite days at camps are the days that you laugh until you cry. And then if I get just one of those a summer, it's been a good summer. Most summer I'd have more than one of those days, but I'm almost sort of waiting for that day when we laugh until we cry. And I realized in my first summer that I hadn't allowed myself to do that. Part of it was that I wasn't letting people get to know me, that I was so caught up in all of the challenges that I hadn't put myself out there in any way. And so I had to learn to relax, trust in the people around me, and have some fun with it. So it made a huge difference to the 14 years that I was a camp director. I think that was one of the key parts to that sustainability was having fun with the stuff that we did. My final piece of advice for someone just starting out is that I think you need mentors. It's so important to have a mentor that you can call on. You develop those relationships by doing things, meeting people online and getting to know them, or meeting them at conferences, and just having chats. I always think my favorite part of any conference are the evenings when the activities are done and people are just sitting around chatting and discussing problems for the summer, or you won't believe what happened, and those kind of things I think are what really make it. And that's how you develop long-term friends who get you, and who that you can unwind to. And one of my biggest challenges to you, the listeners, is I wouldn't do this job anymore as a camp director if I couldn't have a mastermind group. And that is just a group of people who are at my same level in camp. And you go to camphacker.tv, search for mastermind. We'll show you right there how to set up a mastermind group. But a mastermind just is a group of people that meet regularly, found with camp directors. It's best. People like to do it every 2 weeks, just for an hour and a half or an hour on Skype, and just tell people everything. And the amount of trust that develops between those group of people is enormous. The stuff that people share is amazing. And I facilitate and people pay for facilitated masterminds, but all the materials out there, you could run it yourself. But just having 4 friends who, know your struggles day to day throughout the winter that you could call on if something happens, just to keep yourself sane, is something that will help you do this job long term. It is an incredibly stressful job, and it's gotten a lot more so since I started directing. That summer I was 23 was I was 94. So in that time, the job has gotten so much more stressful. But having the people around you who know you and you can talk to is incredibly important. And like Mark said, that often at a certain point won't be the people that you work with. Because at a certain point, they're going to have to be an employee-employer relationship where you still have fun with them, but they're not going to be the ones you open up to. So I would encourage everyone getting started, find a group of people who are also getting started, and just have regular conversations with them. The accountability alone, I think, is worth it. Plus, having these group of people to call on when you need them, and anyway, it's great relationships. I think it's really awesome. Topher, for you, is there any final thoughts that you have about helping people get ready to do this for a long term?
Well, I would say I would just kind of echo a little bit of what you were saying as far as the what did you call the meeting up groups that you have every couple weeks?
Masterminds.
The mastermind group. So I don't. That's a good idea. I don't do that specifically. I would like to, but what we have going on here at Camp Gray is there's a number of people that I can go to, and I love to brainstorm. That's one of my favorite things to do, and I think that's come from, again, kind of taking the reins and leaving the binder behind that the previous guy left. Is let's brainstorm and create our own path. And so there's certain people, like there's a guy, Tim, that I always call upon when we're trying to brainstorm for our big week-long competition. And and he lives in Kansas now, but he looks forward to it so much that he can contribute in that way. And there's a number of people like that for different things that we do that I can reach out to. We heard a quote once at a camp conference that the closer you are to weird, the closer you are to success, or something like that. I'm totally butchering it. But
It's a Seth Godin quote from one of my presentations.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
How does it go exactly?
Well, the weirder you are, the more you are truly remarkable. At the moment that you say to yourself, we couldn't get any weirder, then you're beginning to become truly remarkable.
And we heard that at a conference. I guess, I didn't even remember this from you, Travis, but that's great. And we've really latched onto that. And all the brainstorming that I do when I reach out to people, or the brainstorming that we do here at camp, we talk about all that all the time. Like, yeah, that sounds pretty weird. Let's do it. Mm-hmm. And so I would just recommend that. It keeps things fresh at camp, and it makes it fun for you.
Yeah, right on. Thank you.
I think camp is kind of what I like about the word weird. I love that camp is that place that allows people to still be weird, and without that, you can do things at camp and someone will call you weird that the same people wouldn't have the courage to do it in the city and stuff, and wear that outfit, like wake up in the morning and just put on that. Why? You're so weird. Yeah, but you wouldn't have that same courage. And it's cool that there's still a place that accepts weird, right? And that's what summer camp, to me, that's why I love I love when someone, a camper or staff goes, "You're so weird." I'm like, "Thank you."
It's a compliment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd rather be weird than boring, right? Like,
Yeah.
Travis, for you, I'm assuming you were going to ask me the same question. Yeah. So, likewise, I think mentors. I think, never be afraid to ask someone, "Hey, I think camp people are always willing to help others. Like we've all been there, so it's kind of cool to give back. But I also love to continually learn. I think that's a huge thing, that people get into a role and you become a senior person and a camp director. And you're like, I don't need to go to a conference anymore. I know everything that there is, and I don't need to read a book, and I don't need to listen to podcasts. Like, the journey of learning and constantly growing and growing and growing. That you got to keep up with. Make it a point to listen to a different podcast. Buy a magazine that you wouldn't really, typically do. Call someone and say, what are your top 5 books on leadership, on mentoring, on something different also to read someone's biographies, whether they're in camping or not, because there's always these huge takeaways. So I am, a student of obsessive, constantly reading different leadership books and going to conferences. And, even prior to this conversation, we were just talking about which podcasts we liked. And I'm like, awesome, more things to, rather than listening to like the radio and stuff, constantly learning, I think, and open to change. I think that's what you said is being always, one of the things that we have, one of the traditions that we have at camp is that we love change. And that's a tradition, and people are like, well, that's kind of neat. Usually tradition is like you're set in stone. I said, no, but our tradition has changed. Like, right. To constant, because there's going to be, as a camp director, you're in that position that you can constantly change, and just because someone did it that way doesn't mean like you said, Joe's binder that he gave you of how to be a camp director, that's how he did it. Doesn't mean that's how I want to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, thank you both. That was awesome. And so we are going to then turn on to and go to the tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
Before they do that, I want to tell you that the tool of the week is brought to you by the CampHacker marketing wall calendar. Some of you watching the video can see it behind me on the wall here. We are doing some unusual pricing with that because it's a calendar that starts in September and goes to September. Every month we're taking off 1/12 of the price. So the price is dropping. So you're likely to be listening to this in December or January. And so if you go to camphacker.tv, you'll see the CampHacker marketing wall calendar, and you can get it. It's still useful. I think that you'll find lots of use for it for this season and into the fall. But I encourage you to go check that out on camphacker.tv. So,
Travis,
yes.
I noticed on the calendar,
Yeah.
yesterday on Thursday, it's TBT.
Yes.
TBT.
Yeah.
I just noticed I've had it up in my office, and I was like, oh, cool. I picked up on that. It's a great tool.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, TBT Throwback Thursday, just to remind
Yeah.
people to put out some old pictures or something fun for your alumni on Thursday. So
Yeah.
thank you for that, Mark. Yeah, so for people joining us for the first time, and I'm sure we'll have lots of new listeners with Mark and Topher, their crowd of followers joining and listening to the podcast for the first time. The tool of the week is just something that each of us brings that helps us become a better camp director. And so, Mark, I wonder if you'd start off with yours, please.
Sure. Mine is actually one of my favorite podcasts, which is the TED Radio Hour by N as in new PR, NPR Radio Hour. It's hosted by Guy Raz, and they're about 50 minutes long. 45, 50 minutes long. But they're amazing. This guy, I love the way that he takes a bunch of different podcasts and they kind of piece it together. He's really entertaining, great, really cool, different topics. I love the TED Talks, and this is kind of like they explode all the TED Talks and bring all these little snippets together. So it's one of my favorite podcasts, the TED Radio Hour by NPR.
Right on. Thanks, Mark. I can echo that is a great one. I also enjoy it. For you, Topher?
Yeah, so here at Camp Gray, we love creating videos and being creative and being weird as well. And so we get a lot of our inspiration from Vimeo. They have staff videos of the day. Every day they've got close to a dozen new videos that they recommend people check out. So I'd like to say that we get all of our ideas from our own brains for our videos, but that's not true. We look at a lot of videos and a lot of stuff out there and kind of take. So I would recommend if you're looking for creative new video ideas, check out Vimeo staff picks of the day.
Staff picks, right on. Cool, thank you so much. My pick is a book by a guy who wrote The Back of the Napkin. It's just about exploring drawing as a way of increasing your creative thinking. And he's really big on encouraging people who say they can't draw to take a risk and draw this. And he gives people tools for that. Well, his latest book is called Blah, Blah, Blah. And it is awesome. It is What to Do When Words Don't Work. Part of the challenge of marketing summer camp is that if you haven't been there, it's hard to get. It's hard to understand what summer camp is. And I think that some of the tools in here would be great for people to either put it up in video form, like a Whiteboard Wednesday, where you're drawing on a whiteboard and just explaining a piece of your program, or in general, using drawing as a tool to get people who haven't been to camp to understand what it is we do. Because the thing that we go up against with families that don't have camp in their background, don't have at least one parent or grandparent who's been to camp, is that to them, every camp is white hot American summer. And every camp is meatballs. And so we need to get past that by telling better stories. And this, I think, is a great tool for collecting and telling better stories and explaining what we do, because it's so it's visual. It is more engaging for people. It disrupts that, people shutting down their brains when they hear summer camp because of all of the bad things, the impressions that people have about camp. So
Travis, I saw him speak. There's a great when I said constantly learning, there's a great series of speakers, the Art of series. So they do all over the world. I think the Art of, there's the Art of Leadership, the Art of Management, the Art of marketing. So him and Daniel Pink spoke, and he in person, his presentation still to this day was, I think, one of the best presentations I've ever seen, because it was literally, he just was drawing the entire time, and it was going from these guys who went from these very stiff PowerPoint presentations to this guy who just little stick people the entire time, and being a right brain kind of creative thinker. He's so and I read some of his books. In person, if anyone ever gets a chance to see this guy, is absolutely mind-boggling, brilliant. I haven't read that book though.
Yep, his name's Dan Rome. So look for some videos and check out his books.
Yeah, it's great.
Right on.
Cool. See that one.
Well, thank you to both of you for being here. Mark, can you tell people if they have any follow-up questions for you or want to get in contact, heap praise upon you, where they should find you to do so?
Yes. Well, not on Skype because apparently I have 3 different Skype accounts. But the easy one is Mark, M-A-R-C, at Camp Tamarack. And it's Camp Tamarack is TAMARACK.info. There's a bunch of Camp Tamaracks, but we're the camptamarack.info. Or if you just Google Camp Tamarack Canada or Ontario, you can find us, info at camptamarack.info. Happy to help out with anything that people need for sure.
Right on. And Mark's too humble to say so, but I think you should also check out Mark Cooper Art, because Mark is also an amazing artist. So does some really cool stuff. So Mark, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right on. And Topher, how about you? How can people heap praise upon you?
They'll just send an email to bigfun@campgray.com, and Gray is Gray. Likewise, I'm happy to talk about camp, especially in the winter here in Wisconsin. I love talking summer camp, so send your questions my way.
Right on. Well, thank you to both of you for joining us today. We're sorry that Gab, Dan, and Joe weren't able to make it, but it's been a great show, and I'm really pleased with the way the conversation went. So if you, the listener, have got some good stuff out of the show, you appreciated some stuff or wrote down some quotes. I wrote down a couple quotes for tweeting out this show. Any of those things that you got some value, we'd love it if you would share the show around. And an easy way to do that is on top of the iTunes review, you can just tweet out something. If you go to camphacker.tv/love, you can let people know that you appreciated the show and that you got something out of it, and just share what you got out of it and what the benefits were to you. You can also get in touch with me, Travis, at camphacker.tv, if you have any questions or follow-up or suggestions. And finally, the last thing I would say is that the show notes from this, so the links to the tools of the week, etc., can be found at camphacker.tv/podcast. So thank you very much to the two of you for joining me, and to everybody who's been watching on YouTube and listening in your cars or while you're walking your dog on the trails at camp. Thanks for the evening, friends.
The Camp Hacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.
Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work, it shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable, you'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.